Ortelli. As we were putting this conference together and looking at the theme of bringing teaching to the next level, we chose that theme because our focal point, especially this year, is the Teacher Education Standards Project. And it's an especially important time because we are putting onto the landscape something that no organization in our field has ever done before. And it's a bold move, especially for an organization as young as ours. And in the work that we've been doing, we've been looking outside of the massage therapy field to see how other professional organizations and disciplines have done this very thing. And the National League for Nursing was one of the organizations that I had been studying as we were forming the Alliance to see how are these other education organizations structured, how do they do what they do, what are they doing today, how do they get there. So through that investigation, I got referred by their national office to Tracy Ortelli, because I was going back and forth with them, and then when I finally said what we were looking for, the executive assistant to the president of the organization said, "Oh, you want Tracy Ortelli." So, and that's why I contacted her, and we were just very, very grateful that she has given of her time and expertise to come here and share her perspective with us. Tracy is the Vice President for Academic Affairs of the Galen College of Nursing. It's a for-profit school of nursing with 4 campuses across the country, and she is their Chief Academic Officer. And she has done a lot of work with and for the National League for Nursing, including directing their project to create the Academic Nurse Educator Certification Program and Exam. So it's like when you're looking for a model, go look for somebody else who's maybe been there and done that. And Tracy definitely fits that job description. So she's also worked as a test developer and consultant for the National Council of State Boards of Nursing, working on the National Nursing Licensing Exam. She's worked as a nurse both in clinical settings and in educational settings, and she is a candidate for a doctoral degree, and her dissertation, interestingly enough, is looking at the origins of nursing education. And the discussions that Tracy and I have had, she's noted some very interesting parallels in where nursing has come from over its 100+ year history, and the kinds of challenges and opportunities that we are facing in the field of massage therapy, and especially with massage therapy education. So it's with great pleasure that I give you Tracy Ortelli.
Knot in my neck, and I never think that. And I kept hearing all these people say, I'm a massage therapist, and I'm like, I think my shoulder really hurts. I'm really not trying to get a good massage. But interestingly, before I came here, last week I was on vacation, and I have the benefit, because of the position that I have 3,000 students that I'm responsible for, 300 full-time faculty, 4 campuses in 4 different states. I'm working on a dissertation. I have a family. I work in Louisville, Kentucky, but I live in New Jersey. And so because of that, our president of our college provides me with a professional coach. I think to help you keep it together some days, you know. Actually, it's a very wonderful thing because I get somebody with a perspective who isn't really in the weeds, but has a perspective that can offer me good advice. And so I was getting ready to go on vacation, and he said, "What are you going to do to prepare to go on vacation?" And I'm like, "I have to prepare to go on vacation. Let's go on vacation." And he said, "No, you really need to think about it if you want to enjoy this vacation and get what you need to get out of it." And so I said, "All right, I'll think about it." And so the first thing that I decided that I was going to take an electronic vacation. You need to go to the Betty Ford Center, I think, for a week before you decide that you're going to give up here, because it's like an addiction. But I decided that I was going to put the iPhone away and not go through all my email. And so I was really proud of myself because, you know, I come back and I'm like, the next week that I'm meeting with Rob, I said, "This is how I'm going to prepare for my vacation. I'm putting my iPhone away." And he said, "Very good. There's one more thing you need to do. While you're on vacation, as soon as you get there, And this is not a warm, fuzzy guy, I have to tell you. He said, you need to go find some place, and you need a massage. And it was really sort of weird to me, because in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about this presentation that I have to give. I've been working with this gentleman for 3 years. Never once in 3 years has the word massage ever come up in any conversation that we've ever had. So I don't know exactly what he thought about that. Like, I was like, do you think I need a massage? He said, I do. So now I'm really thinking, well, what does that mean? He said, no, you can't go on this vacation with you are one big knot. You can't go on a vacation like this. You need to start out right, put the phone away, start out right. So I did put the phone away, but unfortunately, I didn't get that massage because I got so confused. I was in a resort town at the Jersey Shore, not like the one on TV. And I got really confused right away because I couldn't, I'm sort of a perfectionist and I couldn't figure out which one I wanted to go to and would this be a good one? And, because usually when I go and do that, I always talk to somebody and that's how I get that is by word of mouth and somebody that they referred. So I didn't get that, but that's foremost on my mind that I have to incorporate that in my life. And what I think is important about that fact is here's an organization who's paying a professional coach to help their chief academic officer. And one of the recommendations that I'm getting is your profession. To help me be the best leader that I can be, they're recommending that I really take care of myself. So I share that with you to just let you know in ways that you might not realize how your profession, which is a healing art, is really, truly going into the mainstream and just becoming a part of the common conversation that people are having when they're trying to be the very best that they can be. And I think that that's really important, and it doesn't escape me that in 3 years that this conversation never occurred, but it occurred 2 weeks before I was to come here, and I think that there's no coincidences. To tell you, I know that Rick told you a little bit about myself. He is an extremely persuasive gentleman, I need to tell you. He's very intent on what he wants. He's extremely persuasive. He contacted me last February after hunting me down, and I think I was in one of our campuses in San Antonio, Texas, and I just realized that one of our deans had resigned, and life was going on, and he wanted this to happen in August, and our oldest child is going away to college tomorrow. This gentleman convinced me to come here today, and we're sending his son to college tomorrow. But what really spoke to me when I had these, at first I told him, I'm really very sorry, but I really can't do this. I'm really very busy. But then the more I spoke to him, and the more I understood what it was that you're trying to accomplish, it really, really resonated with what is a passion of mine, and that is the preparation of those who teach. I got into this passion about 1996, and it was one of those things that who knows why, but you just find yourself in the right spot at the right time. I was an open heart intensive care unit nurse in New York City for many, many years. Talk about knots in your neck, And I think there's a shelf life to that. I did it for about 15 years, and then I was ready for a career change. And I got this weekly, it's not a journal, it's called Nursing Spectrum, and it's a free thing that you get every other week. It's got articles in it and ads in the back. I'm sure your profession has something like that. And there was this ad in there for a test developer for the licensure exam at Educational Testing Service in Princeton, New Jersey. And you needed to have a master's degree, which I had. And I also wanted you to have teaching experience, and mine was limited to precepting new faculty in a hospital. I really had absolutely no qualifications for this test development job. But my heart started racing when I saw this, and I thought, I've been an open heart intensive care unit nurse for 15 years. It's logical that my passion really is test development. So I went to the job. I went to the job interview, and they hired me. And I don't know if it was just that they needed people, and I had the master's degree and a nurse, and I could really convince them that I really wanted that. But I got there at Educational Testing Service, and it's really quite something. It's in Princeton, New Jersey. It's down the street from the university. I think they think that they're Princeton. It's the land of SATs and GREs, and it's a place, it's a culture. And our job then was, our licensure examination used to be paper paper and pencil, we turned it to computer adaptive testing. And so that was our responsibility, was to disassemble all of that and make it be computer adaptive. And I was home. I was like, I love this. But one of the things that I realized is in this process, what we had was we would fly nurse educators in from all over the country who taught in various types of programs, and they would write the items, and they would be doctorally prepared deans and program directors and chairs and you name it. And they would come in and they would let you know who they were when they were writing these items. And then we would clean up the items because we didn't want this exam to look like it was written by 500 people like it really was. And then we would have these item review sessions afterwards where people would have to review them. But one of the things that I realized when I saw the items that were being written was, these people don't know how to write test questions. They're mean. And then the other thing that I learned, and the phenomenon that I experienced from the item reviewers, is they would sit there and say, our test questions on our exams in my nursing program look nothing like this. So as fate would have it, somebody came to me one day and said, would you come to our school and teach us how to write test items? I said, do you think your faculty would really want me to? They're like, are you kidding? So I said, okay. So I went, and it turned into be a thing. And for years then, I did test development workshops all throughout the country, teaching faculty how to do their job. Teaching faculty how to do their job. And so it really started to dawn on me that there's this evolution from being a nurse to a nurse educator. But how do you get there? And what preparation do you have? And how scary is it that we're 3 million nurses? We're taking care of patients. And you start to recognize that nurse educator, you know, sometimes we say a nurse is a nurse is a nurse, but that doesn't necessarily make you be a nurse educator. I had also worked as a part-time adjunct faculty member, and I taught full-time in an academic institution. And so what happened to me one day, as fate would have it as well, at 3:30 in the afternoon on a Saturday in October, the senior vice president from the National League for Nursing calls me in my home, said I was just having lunch with somebody, and we need to start a certification program for nurse educators, and your name was recommended to me, and I'd really like you to come into our office in New York City and talk to us about doing this. Me? You're talking to me? And so I went in and I met with her, and I, you know, took the opportunity because of this past experience that I had, and this recognition that I had, and this knowing that I had, and I decided that I would take on this project. And the purpose of this project was to develop a certification program for nurse educators. Interestingly, this was a long time in the making to have this happen, and I'm going to tell you in a few minutes here the history of nursing and how long it came. And I want you to get, my point of what I want you to understand is to appreciate how long some of this has really taken to get us here. And I will say it was really one of the best experiences of my life. As a result of that job, I then ended up getting another, getting this position that I have now. But, one of the things that did happen at 3 weeks into the job was I woke up in the middle of the night and I thought, I agreed to do what? So I called my boss the next day and I said, I need to talk to you because I need to let you know I have never created a national certification program for nurse educators before. And she laughed at me and she said, nobody has. You'll be fine. And she hung up. So what I say to you, though, and the point of that is there's a lot of things that no one's ever done. And you can get a little paralyzed and think, once you really start to get into it, once you get beyond the honeymoon phase where it's like, this is a great idea. And then you really get into it and you're like, what are we thinking? Because I was thinking, if this was such a good idea, somebody would have done this about 100 years ago, okay? So, I think that that's one of those things to really, really think about. One of the things that I've done I still have that little C after my name with PhD, and I sure hope it goes away sometime soon. I'm done with all my coursework. I'm really just in the middle of writing my dissertation right now. But one of the things that I've done is I've really investigated the history of nursing education. Not how we educate nurses, how do we prepare those who teach? And let me tell you, it's really been very difficult for me to find that information because everything about nursing education is about how to teach nurses And there's really no real discussion about how the heck did we ever prepare these people who are teaching the nurses, okay? And so in my history, in my review of this history, one of the things that I discovered was the very first account of teaching nursing was back in 1798 by a physician named Valentine Seaman at New York Hospital, and he taught nurse attendants. This was back in the 1700s. There's no recorded anything about this then until the 1800s. In 1873, there were 3 nursing programs that started in the United States. One at Bellevue, one at Mass General, and one at New Haven, and they were Florence Nightingale-inspired schools. And the point of these schools was they were supposed to be run by the nursing instructors and affiliated with the hospital. Run by the instructors, affiliated with the hospital. But see, that didn't last for very long, because economically they couldn't survive, so the hospitals absorbed them. And then what we had was a phenomenon that lasted for quite a long time, where nursing education started out by nurses serving as unpaid laborers for hospitals. That's how it started. They didn't get paid, they didn't pay to go to nursing school, and really how they learned was, and this is the turn of the century here, in the early 1900s, imagine this, I imagine the smell and what this must have looked like in the wards, and what would happen is, if the census would drop, they would kick people out of the nursing program, they never hired these individuals. What happened is, because the students were the ones that performed patient care back then. So, what nurses did at the turn of the century is they either went into public health nursing or they went into private duty nursing, but they weren't the ones working in the hospitals because the students were doing that. They were providing all the care. And they would be instructed either by a physician or a superintendent. That's what they called them. And the superintendent was in charge of the hospital, and she was also in charge of the education, and she probably has only graduated about a year ago, okay? And she learned by experience. And so in 1893, there was an organization called the American Society of Superintendents and Training Schools. And you know how they have those questions, like, if you could have dinner with anybody dead or alive, who would it be? One of mine would be, now, I've added this to my list, a lady named Isabel Hampton Robb. Because she was at the Chicago World's Fair, and she said, people, this is wrong. What is happening to nursing is wrong. First of all, we're losing sight of our profession. These hospitals are dictating how our nursing students are being educated, and we need to form an organization because we need to take control of our organization, of our profession. And so they had 2 major objectives, and one of them was to have standardized curriculum, because what they realized is if this hospital had this need, and this hospital had this need, and this hospital had this need, that's what the curriculum was. It was dependent on the needs of the institution. The other thing they realized back in 1893 was that in order for there to be safe patient care, you needed to think about the preparation of those who taught. 1893, they started talking about that. So back in the early, like around 1899 and at the turn of the century, there was an experiment that was done at Teachers College, and they offered these courses called hospital economics, and they taught them how to do laundry, and how to order the linens, and how to make sure all the food got done, and how to teach. The vision wasn't real clear yet, but the point is, that was what the job was, and that is how it started. And then that evolved over time. And the program got more refined, and they ended up with a division of nursing. And actually, in 1934, they offered the first doctoral degree. Yeah, it was an EDD to prepare people to teach. But interestingly, over our course of time, what happened is from then until now, it took a long time. And I don't know if you do this in your profession, but in nursing, this is what we love to do. And I know there's one nurse over there who's smiling. When we don't like what we hear in nursing, we just go form a new group. We're really good at that. Not only do we do that, if we don't like something, do you know how many degrees we have in nursing? We have a diploma, we have an associate degree, we have an LPN, we have a baccalaureate degree, we have a master's degree, PhD, DNS, DSN, EDD, DNP. Because when we don't like how education goes, then we just create a brand new degree. And so then you put these initials after your name, and who the heck knows exactly what it is that you're supposed to be doing. And one of the lessons that I think that we should have learned from that is that in order for us, the AMA, let me tell you, they don't do this. There's the AMA, there's MD, they pretty much go down that path, and they're pretty powerful and they're pretty strong. Because they're big, and they're unified, and they don't have a million different infighting organizations and differences of opinion about how to move forward. And it's not that necessarily one is better than the other, but do we need to have this many of them, I think is a really important point. One of the things that I came across as I was working on my dissertation was something that I think is really wise, and it says, nurse educators are pioneers who practice two professions, teaching and nursing. And in order to adequately fulfill these roles, it's important that they receive an education and not training. And so what I ask you to think about as you go through your conference here is, do you want to provide your students an education, or do you want to provide them with training? Because I think that there's a very big difference between the two. That was in 1936. In 1949, a woman named Dr. McManus said, preparation for the faculty role essentially requires a new field of study, which should include principles and methods of teaching. Now, mind you, I told you that in 1899, Teachers College started a program to prepare the hospital economics people. And now, 50 years later, somebody's saying, oh, and by the way, I think if you want to teach, you need to be prepared for the role. It takes us a little while sometimes to move forward. So within that, I think, is that concept that I think that I invite you to think about as you go through this conference is preparing those who teach. Because the importance of preparing those to teach, I think, relates to the earlier concept of whether you're going to get education or whether you're going to provide training. We have all this time that passed with these ideas about how this is going to move forward, and it wasn't until 2000 that now this took legs. And what happened is in 1998, a woman named Ruth Corcoran became the CEO of the National League for Nursing. And the National League for Nursing just happens to be the organization that originally started out as the American Society of Superintendents of Training Schools, and it changed its name over the years. And she came in 1998, and she said, I don't understand. We certify nurse practitioners, we certify nurse anesthetists, we certify clinical nurse specialists, we certify oncology nurses, we certify all sorts of specialized nurses. Why don't we certify faculty? And her board of directors looked at her and said, for what? Why would you want to certify them? And she said, so that you can make sure they know how to teach. They said, well, they have a PhD, or they have a rank, or they have a master's degree. Not enough. She said, I don't think so. And it took her 5 years to convince the board of directors to move forward with this idea. The first thing that happened was that they convened a think tank, which is something that I'm sure that you folks have engaged in on some level, about what really is this. So here we have these ideas out there that this should happen, but then there's this whole process of how do you rein this in and how do you really take this big idea and make it something real. Out of this think tank came the preparation of the nurse educator position statement, and I want to share some excerpts out of that with you. Then we did a needs analysis, and you can see on here all of these different things we did. A practice analysis, we developed the core competencies, we did a scope of practice, and we launched an examination. Look at the years on all of that. 2005, 2005 was a busy year for us. But my point is, we started talking about this in 1899. learn from our mistakes. And it wasn't until we really focused our intention on this, until we all knew we needed to do it. That wasn't the point. You could go to any college campus across the United States of America and they go, oh my God, my faculty don't know how to teach. But they never did anything about it. And so it really wasn't until we focused our intention on it that things really started to happen. This position statement that we wrote on the preparation of nurse educators, which was written in 2002, there's some excerpts of it that I want to share with you because I think it's relevant to some of the things that may be going on in your occupation. And what it said in this position statement, it asserts that the nurse educator role requires specialized preparation. It's not enough to just be a nurse and say, I'm going to go teach. Because we all know people teach the way they were taught. Right? I went to Ohio State University for college, for nursing school, in the 1970s. Guess what? There was no AIDS. There was no electronic medical records. There was really no technology. There weren't half the medications that there were. You know, infants didn't live at 22 weeks just to take your pick. I would teach the way I was taught back in the 1970s. In 2011? Really? And so that is one of the reasons why if you don't really prepare these individuals, you're going to get what you get. They said, but they require specialized preparation, and every individual engaged in the academic enterprise must be prepared to implement that role successfully. In this position statement, they articulated the need to outline a preferred future for the preparation of nurse educators. Articulate what do you want your preferred future to be. You design it. You pick it. But I will tell you that if you don't, someone else will do that for you. An accrediting body, a licensing body, a state board of whatever. So you decide and embrace this hard work as your preferred future, or you could give that up to somebody else. Some of the other things that they indicated is it said there's a core of knowledge and skills that is essential if one is to be effective and achieve excellence in the role. That core of knowledge and skills entails the ability to facilitate learning, advance the total development and professional socialization of the learner, design appropriate learning experiences, and evaluate learning outcomes. Is this not something that every single solitary profession on earth needs to do? These are universal truths if we want to advance our profession. But they also went on to say the academic community should not assume that individuals are qualified to teach simply because they hold a particular credential. And in nursing education, where we have a lot of degrees, we love degrees after our name, where you have a lot of degrees, there's a lot of assumptions there. Or make an assumption that because they have expertise in a particular area, that makes them qualified to teach. The academic community should also not assume that individuals learn to be teachers, advisors, curriculum developers, and educational leaders through on-the-job training or trial by fire, rather through the planned, deliberate preparation for such roles and responsibilities. I don't know all that much about the education process for massage therapy, but I'm going to guess a few of the educators maybe learned by on-the-job training. They were hired one day, and teaching. Has it ever happened in any of the programs that you have? All of them. We did the same thing. But what we did in nursing is we took it up a notch. And we said, back in 1965, we had a position statement that the American Nurses Association put out there and said, in 1965, entry into practice will be baccalaureate education. Everybody who's a nurse needs to have a bachelor's degree. They gave it was a failed initiative. They gave not one thought about who in the heck was going to be qualified to go into all of those universities and prepare people at the baccalaureate level. You're going to get a nurse with a diploma going into, Vanderbilt saying, I'm here. You that. So we make these big sweeping things and say we want this, but we don't really think about how are we going to prepare the teachers. And it sounds to me what's so important is that this is the work that you are setting off to do. Finally, they said the concepts of excellence as a teacher or excellence as a faculty member must be discussed more often in the academic community, and more attention must be given to the ongoing development of faculty as educators. Where your focus goes, results will follow. You need to discuss this. You can't just put a position statement out there and say, here you go. You need to do exactly what it is that you're doing. The final outcome of this paper really was, there were two things that were going on. There was this big push to develop, see, when you're trying to create a profession, you need to have certain things. You need to have a code of ethics. You need to have a body of research that supports what you're doing. And one of the things that happened is there would be federal monies that were given to prepare PhDs. But their focus really was in nursing to advance the science of nursing without any thought given to what is the science of nursing education. How should we do clinical? How should we do lab? Should we do online? So what this really teased out was, this is no disrespect to practice. We all start out as practitioners, but that's a science, and education is a science. And do not confuse the two. So what happened after we developed this position statement, or put out this position statement, was the big question of, okay, now what? Because one of the recommendations that we made was that there should be certification. Blasphemy, I tell you. We should certify faculty. We should make these people prove they know something and are qualified to teach. Talk about herding cats. What we did, though, was we developed a needs analysis. And we did two surveys. One was to deans and directors and chairs of nursing programs. And these were all nursing programs. LPN, diploma, associate degree, baccalaureate education, master's degree, PhD, EDD. Every program that we have, we sent this survey out to. And one of the things that I should mention is this is examination that we ended up developing is for all nurse educators, regardless of educational institution type that they teach in. You want to talk about consensus building. Putting all of those people around the table. Take somebody who works in a practical nursing program and have them sit next to the Dean of Duquesne, who has a PhD program, and get everybody to play nice and respect what everybody else has. I have to say we did do a good job of this because we ended up with a credential, and that was the mandate that we had, that we were not going to split this apart anymore. Teaching is teaching. Whether you're teaching in a PN program or teaching in a PhD program, you need to, whether you're teaching kindergarten or in Harvard, you need some basic tenets. Now, what is the difference and what makes you specialized is that you're a subject matter expert. You're a subject matter expert that you've decided now that you also want to go into teaching. I say this to my faculty all the time. I get nurse practitioners that come, and they're like, oh my God, I came to teach here because I thought it would be easier. Because, you know, they're working in hospitals a million hours a day, and that's hard work. I've been there. I know how hard it is. But so then I say to them, you know, I'm like, well, what's really giving you trouble? And they're like, I got to write a syllabus, I have to develop exams, I got to talk to the students, you know, the students are complaining, hello, you know, FERPA, what can I say, what can't I say, ADA, special accommodations, you know, who knew? And so what I always tell them very calmly is, did you not recognize that when you decided to come here to work, you were entering a new profession? You came in as a nurse, and now I want you to be a nurse educator. And I can tell by the look on their eyes that this never dawned on them. What were you thinking? You were just going to know as a nurse practitioner how to whip up a syllabi that had competency statements that were written the way that our accreditor wants them written, because see, that's the other push that you have as you move forward with all of these things. you've got all these regulators, and accrediting bodies, and licensing boards, and all of these hoops that you need to jump through to demonstrate that what you're delivering is filled with integrity. We did this survey. What we did was did it on SurveyMonkey or something like that. We bought 1,000 little responses because we thought that would be good. Well, we gave 1,000, and all of a sudden, like, something happened with the computer, and we got a phone call from somebody, and they said, we used up 1,000 of those surveys. And so then we bought another 1,000, and within the span of 96 hours, 3,000 people responded to this ad. And they themselves expressed an interest in becoming certified. And the faculty, 81% of our faculty say they didn't hold any certification in nursing, and here was the hitch, was 76 expressed interest in becoming certified. We have 31,000 full-time nursing faculty in our country, and about 26,000 part-time faculty. So this was fairly significant in number that there was this expressed interest now. From 1899 to now, 2003, we're finally getting to the point where we've done enough work to get people to say, yes, we want this. So then the next question was, what should we build? And this is where I came in, and then this is what my job was to make this happen. The very first thing that we did was we developed core competencies of nurse educators with task statements. And I think this is something very similar to what you've done. I've actually looked at what you have, and I look at some of these things, and I see a lot of parallels in there. And so that's what this group did as well. And so this is not unfamiliar to you. And this is just what they are. And it's really related to teaching, assessing, developing a curriculum, evaluating your program, and then we also added things in there like being a change agent and a leader, pursuing continuous quality improvement in your role, engaging in scholarship, whether you're giving a presentation, writing a paper, or engaging in research. And then the last one was, you need to know how to function in the institutional environment that you're in. And I'm thinking, as I was listening to all of you, there's so many different aspects of your role that you do, and that's wonderful. But before people go into this, or before people get a job, I think they really need to have a firm understanding of where it is that they are. Because if they come in with their assumptions, and this isn't the vision, or the intent, or the desire of this, you're going to have a problem. And then a lot of times you just get this tension, because people are just unhappy. And it's like, well, this isn't what you want. You need to find what you want. So we thought that that was very important as well. In addition, there was a text that was written. It was a book, and it also then went through and did all of the research. It looked at nursing, allied health, other professions as well. Identified what was in there, identified what was missing, and then prioritized where we needed to go, because you certainly can't do everything all at once. For anybody who's interested, if you've ever went to the NLN website, a lot of this information is www.nln.org. Our position statements are all up there, and our core competencies and whatnot. www.nln.org. If you go over to the side, like publications is where the position statements are, and I think under professional development is where the core competencies are. Once we had the core competencies that this group had developed, then the next thing that we needed to do to develop a certification examination is that we needed to develop a test blueprint for the exam. So we took these core competencies and we created a special group, and we conducted a practice analysis. So we took all of those things that were identified, we distributed another survey, and then what we did was we asked those who were qualified to teach, who were already in the profession, how they rated all of these tasks. It would be like, select appropriate learning activities, and, as an example of one of the tasks. And so then they would indicate what they thought was important. And we used that data for two things. We used that data to figure out what the test blueprint should be, because in order to have content validity, you need to have a test blueprint that's valid, that you can link to actual practice. So what we said is, this is how we're linking this to actual practice, right? And the other thing that we did was we talked about we looked at the demographic data of who answered this, and we determined what the eligibility criteria are. In nursing, this certification generally is voluntary, except in some areas where they make it be mandatory. But it wasn't for anybody who just taught. You needed to have certain years of experience, certain educational criteria in order to sit for this exam. And don't think that didn't make a lot of people unhappy. Because we all want what we want. What do you mean I can't sit for this exam? Because you haven't taught for 2 years. But I've taught 7 years as a part-time faculty, but you need to teach full-time. It's interesting that every time you try and put a stake in the ground and decide this is what it is, there's a million different points of view, and that's where you need to really get clear and just to work up front. Otherwise, you're going like this, because everybody has a different way. So we stood very strong with these eligibility criteria. One of the things that I found along the way, as I was working on my dissertation, and I had to come up with my theoretical framework, I found this framework called Abbott's Theory of the Professions. And I just want to share a little bit, a few sentences out of this theory with you, because I think it relates to the work that you're doing. It says, an occupation must create a jurisdiction of expertise. Jurisdictions are the link between a profession and its work. In order to claim jurisdiction, a profession must ask society to recognize its structure through exclusive rights. Then it also goes on to say, each profession must identify the tasks that encompass the work and then make the case that these and only these professionals are qualified to perform the work. So I think what's really important and powerful about that is this is your profession, and you are qualified to perform the work. But how will you convey to society that you, and only you, should have this jurisdiction, turf, territory, whatever you want to call it, that could prevent somebody else from just coming along and saying, here, we're going to do this. And then they go off in a different direction, and they might be calling themselves the same name. It might not be representative of what it is that you folks are doing. So that is why it's important to do these things. One of the other things that we did also prior to developing this exam, again, 2005 was really a busy year, is we developed a scope of practice of academic nurse educators. And that's something that was done after the core competencies were written as well. We developed this credential, and we had a mission. You need a mission. Where are we going, people? And so really what our mission was is to recognize excellence in the advanced specialty role of the academic nurse educator. So we're saying, we know you're a nurse, you have to be a nurse to be a nurse educator, but now you have an advanced specialty role, and this is what defines it. We also had goals that we wanted to distinguish these individuals. We wanted to recognize their specialized knowledge, skill, and expertise. We wanted to strengthen the use of the core competencies. We don't want you to just keep teaching the way that you were taught back in 1960. We want you to use these competencies, and we want you to engage in lifelong learning and to pursue nursing as a career and stay. We have a lot of turnover in nursing education. I don't know if you have this in your profession. These are just the steps that we went through in developing an examination. I don't want to get bogged on in all of that, but to just share it with you that it's a process and it's standard, and every profession who develops a certification exam does something to this effect. So we built it. So then the next question was, did they come? The very first day that we gave, the very first day that we offered the examination for the first time on September 28, 2005. It is a day I will never forget as long as I live. I had 250 people in the ballroom in Baltimore. I think it was at the Hilton. We had our NLN summit there. 2,000 people, 250 people were taking the exam in the ballroom. And there's all of these rules. How many chairs have to be apart, you know, proctoring rules. Proctors come in and they say, these chairs are too close together. You need another ballroom. I'm thinking, I'm going to get another ballroom in 10 minutes to go give this exam. And so we, you know, as yourself inside out at the end to make it work. But then this is where the art of persuasion, and probably I should have had a massage the day before, so you keep your cool, so you don't go to this person, what do you mean I can't do this? But we were able to get it. 250 people took the exam. I believe 174 passed. I think our first pass rate was 84%. Since that point in time, we have now, in September, it'll be 6 years since it's been offered, we have approximately 3,000 individuals have earned the credential. While that's very nice, we have like 30,000 some full-time faculty. So it's making some progress, but it's really one of these things that's going to take time because it's not required in all programs. And it's one of those things that still needs time to evolve. One of the things that we've learned, as we put this whole thing together and as we reflected back on what did we learn, and that's one of the things that I wanted to share with you on this, is what got nursing education where it is today is never going to get us to where we need to go in the future. We started in 1899. It took us until 2005. And now I can stand here and tell you that we have 3,000 people, and like some universities will use it as part of their rank and promotion, and some faculty have it and some faculty don't, but there's still work that needs to be done. And we do have this constant pressure. We have state board of nursing requirements. If you're in a pre-licensure nursing program and you don't have their mandated pass rate, like you're on the website on the blacklist, and that happens 3 years in a row, they can come and close you down. Not good for your institution. So we have these pressures that are, we were thinking that this would really move forward because this was what was really needed. But as time goes on, you realize that these things really do take time. One of the other things that we learned as we did this is that we can't rely on tradition, past practices, and good intentions. Because that got us to where we were in 2005. One of the other things we learned was a house united far surpasses a house divided. Talk about herding cats, moving cemeteries, take your pick of whatever you want to say about it. And we're very, there's actually an article in nursing that talks about nursing's house divided. It started way back when some people said, I don't like the way Florence Nightingale has a vision of nursing. I think the vision of nursing should be like this. And we've done that, and we've done that. We've got the NLM, we've got the AMA, we've got the AAC, and we've got a million organizations. But one of the things that I'm most proud of with this is one examination for all educators, regardless of what setting that you're in. And that is the one thing that will continue to move us forward. If we can all band together, put aside our own personal wants, open our ears, open our minds, open our hearts, think about another point of view, and think, well, is there really strength in numbers? And can we really move forward, even if I don't get exactly what I want, the way I want it? One of the other things that we learned from this is that wide-scale transformation is slow to materialize. And I don't say that to be a downer, but I say that because I want to be very realistic, because this is really quite a journey, and then you get to these points in time after you put forth all this effort and you want to see something, and sometimes it doesn't happen as quickly as you want it to happen, but it does happen over time. One of the things that I look at is when I look at presentations or articles that are written or see things out there. When I used to work there, I knew I could have hairs on their head. I knew every CNE, and I looked at their names, and I knew where they were from, and I knew how many every state had. It was like my passion. Now that I'm not there anymore, and I'm in a different work environment, that's where I see the transformation. I see people's names I don't even know who have this credential all throughout the country, giving presentations, writing papers, being deans of programs, moving forward. And so that, to me, is the transformation that you see. And last but not least, the last thing that we learned is that true ownership emerges during a successful change process. True ownership. And what I mean by that is just when I talked about the transformation. When I see those people with those initials after their name of CNE, they're starting to own this. When I get contacted by different universities that want to embed the Certified Nurse Educator as part of rank and promotion, and anybody that's worked in higher ed knows that that's a whole animal unto itself. And for those people that try and fiddle around with, rank and promotion, that's quite something. But you do that, and you start to see then that all throughout the country, in these little places, not everywhere, and not everybody embraces this and thinks that this is the best thing since sliced white bread, but it continues to grow. It continues to grow. It continues to grow. And so that can only happen because you are the folks who are here, that you are the initial change agents to make whatever will happen for your profession start to happen. Then what needs to happen is the change needs to occur from the innovative people underneath. And so there's this constant pressure. The people moving things forward here, and then the innovative people here, and that's what will really end up giving you the momentum. And this is certainly something that is a process. I strongly encourage your group not to take from 2011 to, that would get you into 21 something, I don't know. I think if you could learn something from us, you could learn that to take the time sooner than later to focus your intention in what it is that you want to do. Because that's what it is that will make it happen. We talk about it all day long because we do that. So that is really those are really my pearls of wisdom for you with regard to the journey that you're on, what you are about to embark. Sort of wrap your brain around what is this, why teacher education, I know how to teach. I've been doing this is what I know. I have been doing this for 25 years. I know what I'm doing, right? Has anybody ever said that to you? But to really embrace that there may be, if you want to sit at the table, if you really want to embrace true integrity in what it is that you do, you will figure out a way, your own way, and that's the important thing, your own way. You all have your unique perspectives. What is going to be your way that you can make it happen? I think one of the things that happens is you see this very, bureaucratic thing, and you're like, I don't want to do that. Ugh, no one's going to tell me what I want to do. This is my profession. I am the master of my profession. But don't, try and figure out how will you make this be yours? How will you meld that? How will you break that divide and break that wall down between that and where it is that you need to go? I wish you great success in these upcoming days. I know we got a little bit of a late start, but I certainly would like to open the floor to any questions that any of you may have.
We're going to get the handheld mics, so we can only take about 15 minutes at the most, so keep your questions extremely well phrased. This is not a time for your soapbox speech or your editorial, but a single point that you'd like to ask Tracy about.
Tracy, hi. My question is,
please stand.
Jurisdiction of expertise, and I just want to find out where that language is, that part of discussion is at the website.
Oh, that is not at the website. I will tell you, it's by somebody named Abbott, A-B-B-O-T-T, and if you would type in Abbott's Theory of the Professions, it's a big book. It was written in 1989. He talks all about it. He's got a website as well. There's been a number of dissertations that have used that as a framework, but it's a book that's out there that you could read about.
It's a good evidence basis for that we could take for our work.
That's right.
Yeah, thank you.
Here you go.
Tracy, hi. I'm Ruth Warner. I'm with the Massage Therapy Foundation, and I'm really thankful for what you've shared with us. One thing I'm curious about is if in the process of developing the certification for educators, you have also developed a way to track outcomes or impacts on the nursing profession because of an increased quality, theoretically, in the teaching.
That is an excellent question, because as my dissertation, what I'm doing for my dissertation is I'm looking at the data and I'm looking to see how different people with years of experience perform on each one of the content areas. And what she always says to me is, so what?
Right.
And that's your question. Okay, so what? What difference does it make? And right now, in this phase of our evolution, I can't tell you that there are any studies that are done. This is so new. The studies that have been done right now are all related to these core competencies. And there's survey studies of individuals saying, do you use these studies? How important are these studies? How well do they impact? There have not been any studies done on students. There haven't been, and the problem with doing a study with educational outcomes will be there's so many variables that how would you attribute that to just one phenomenon? I will tell you, though, that there are some things that have happened throughout the country. Like there's one little school in, Newark, New Jersey, of all places, where every single one of their qualified faculty has the credential. And I think when you start to have phenomenon like that, you can start to look in this very inner city area that had certain pass rates for a long time. I think it's going to be anecdotal, and I think it's going to be small for quite some time. But that is an excellent question. You go down this path, you do these things, and it's like, okay, so what?
Yeah, it seems sensible to have a system in place to at least think about what you might want to track.
That's right.
Thank you so much. That was a really inspiring talk. And thank you for being so candid about the process and reminding us that we need to just be patient. But I was really inspired by creating a jurisdiction, which I'm sure most people in this room agree with me. We're having really a hard time with doing that. No, I don't want to just hear with defining who we want to be.
That's right.
And drawing all the factions together.
That's right.
Nobody wants to seem to take a stand and say, this
That's right.
is what we need. So could you give us some advice on how to do that?
Well, I think one of the things that you could do is when you have these, so you're saying for your profession, because this other work that you have, these competencies that you have are for your teaching project. I'll tell you what we do in nursing. Do you have licensing boards or certification programs? You have those for massage therapy, right? But what you really need, and this is what we do in nursing of what it is that we do a practice analysis. Every year, every 3 years, the National Council of State Boards of Nursing does a practice analysis of all nurses who are 6 months into the profession, entry-level nurses, and they say, what do you do? And there are plenty of companies out there that are psychometricians. You need to do a practice analysis. This would be a difficult project. You need to get to every nook and cranny and corner so that you can encompass everybody who considers themselves a member of your profession. And you need to do a practice analysis. And then you need to define that. You need to have these people answer these questions about what they do. There's different ways that they do practice analyses. And that is the formal way, and that is something where it's not just you just say that you're doing it. It's a formalized process.
I think we have 3 or 4 groups that do practice analysis or have done them.
Yeah, get them together.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We can't get together.
That's a problem. There needs to be, and that's why I say.
But that's what we're hoping to do.
That's right.
The Advocacy Alliance is hoping to do. Merge all of this
into one.
I also have a question. It more attends to process, because when you were talking about, well, I've got 25 years of this and I don't need anybody to tell me what to do and all that.
Yeah.
To me, underneath all that is fear.
Yeah.
And how did you attend to that fear-based reactions as part of your process?
Well, let me tell you, there were fear on 2 ends. I'll tell you a quick story. First day we gave this examination where there were 250 people lined up to take this exam at the ballroom at the Hilton in Baltimore, and the proctors didn't all show up, and the line moved really, really, really slow. So everybody could see who was taking the exam. And I'd be like, oh my God, there's Medina Duquesne. Oh my God, there's Kathleen Gaberson. We used her book to validate these items. What if she fails this exam? One of the things that I learned about how they did that is the leaders of the profession were the first ones to stand in line and to take this examination and say, I'm not afraid, and I will do that. One of the things that we did then, we realized, is we don't do a paper pencil, we do a computerized testing. And so our individuals can just take this examination on their own. Nobody necessarily knows that they've taken that. But there is a lot of fear. And I'll tell you what the biggest problem is it is with those folks who have done this for 25 years. I've had people call me up on the phone after they got home and they failed this exam. They're the dean of their program and they have an EDD. And my exam is just one horrible thing that doesn't know anything. And there is all of that. But I think what you need is you need your change agents in the very beginning to lead the way. And there was nothing more powerful than the Medina Duquesne standing in that line. And I happened to be the MC of events for our summit that year for our, awards banquet. And she said, yeah, I hope I passed the exam. And I'm thinking, I hope you pass this exam more than you do. But you do need to have your change agents in the way because that is going to happen. One of the other things that we did do is we developed a self-assessment examination that people could take online, and it was very similar to the examination, and that gave people a gut check ahead of time. They got a score report back of how they did compared to what the exam was. And the data that we have is that exam is very similar to what the real exam is. And people that have passed the self-assessment exam have passed that exam. So I think you do need to give them tools to prepare ahead of time. Because the people who did the worst on this were people with 25 years of experience thinking, I know all of this, and didn't study. And let me tell you, it's just like anything else, like, who the heck remembers what behaviorism is? You don't remember some of those things. So I think those kinds of tools.
The other piece to echo Bernadette's question about bringing people together, how important is it to have standardized curriculum? I heard you mention that, and we have a bunch of different kinds of schools here, all kinds of what they think is important to teach. And it would seem to go forward with accredited teachers. You also have to have, how hard was that to put together?
Well, let me tell you, we don't have a we just have the standardized exam, but I can speak to standardized curriculum because I had a standardized curriculum in my nursing program. I took this job. I have a campus in Tampa, San Antonio, Louisville, Kentucky, and Cincinnati, Ohio, and I took this job, and first I thought we're all going to have to get this damn credential now that they hired her. And then the next thing that I did was I needed to have a standardized curriculum because I needed to report to my board, and how was I ever going to know why San Antonio, Texas was failing miserably, and I have to go before the Texas Board of Nursing, but Louisville, Kentucky is doing fine. And so my own personal experience of pulling those people in because they didn't like it, because it was like their academic freedom, and what do you mean? What do you mean? Now, one of the things that does help, if you have the power and the control like I did, and trust me when I tell you, I didn't just tell them that you will do this, because I don't know what they're really doing in San Antonio, Texas. They tell me what they're doing, and then I always go there, and they're doing something different. But what you really need to do is you do need to get buy-in, and I needed to have them be the architects of what this curriculum would be. And so I had these people from all these different campuses become the architects, and I'd say, listen, here's the rule. We're only going to have one. We are Galen College of Nursing. And what will happen in any nursing college or any institution, what was happening in mine is depending on where the schools were, if I hired a faculty who went to UT Health Sciences, she taught like she learned at UT Health Sciences. And then I had somebody who was at San Antonio Community College, she taught like they taught. And it was schizophrenic. Our students in their surveys were saying everything changed from course to course to course. And it's like, oh, well, that's because we have people with totally different philosophies teaching you every 15 weeks. Keep up. Keep up. Keep up. You want to be a nurse? Try this. So what you have to do is you have to engage them to be the architect of it. Now, I think on a bigger scale, one of the things that you can do is like for nursing, we have a licensure examination, and it has a test blueprint. So what a lot of places will do generally is that they'll just make sure that they have a map to that test blueprint, and that's a good first step. So I would say find something that's out there, number one, for a common curriculum, and number two, you need to get the people who are going to be actually teaching the course to buy into it, or forget about it.
So how did people prepare to take your exam?
We created the self-assessment examination around the same time that we were developing the exam, because our heads were in it right away. They were different items. And so in the self-assessment exam, then we had a rationale statement, why the right answer was the right answer, the wrong answer was incorrect, and gave some resources that they could go to. Then, like these things happen, usually whenever you create a credential, what really makes the most amount of money is the prep, and not the credential. And then little things just kept popping up all over. Certification prep courses were offered at professional organizations, books popped up, continuing education offerings happened. But the first thing that B.S.N did was create this 65-item self-assessment examination that people could take in the comfort of their own home when nobody was looking.
So we are getting to the end of our time here. We have time for just one more question. Deborah.
Thank you. Something that rumbles around in my head a fair bit, and I don't really know the answer to, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, is what's the relationship between competence as an educator and excellence as an educator?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think the easiest question to that, or the answer to that, between competence, which is minimal competence, the basic requirements to do the job. It is the difference, just like anything in your life, whether you went to the physician, you went to the hospital, you had education, was the difference between that person who just did their job and who you still remember their name this very day. And that really is the difference between competence and excellence. It is it. It is what is it. I don't know what is it. I don't know what makes some people have it. I still know Joan Pryor McCann from 1978, my clinical instructor, because she had it. I think it can be facilitated and developed if people above, the leaders above, recognize that people have it. I think we have responsibilities to mentor those people and not squash them like a bug. But truly there are going to be plenty of people who enter the occupation or profession that don't have it. And that's what you need to decide what to do. Do you keep them or do you let them go?
Thank you.